Life in the quiet suburbs feels picture-perfect for Nick, his wife Maggie, and their little ones, Isla and Max. But disaster strikes one bright morning when Maggie suffers a sudden heart attack and is rushed to the hospital. Days drag by as she clings to life, desperate for a transplant. While Nick juggles his job and solo parenting, stress is crushing him. Hoping for any lifeline, he takes the kids to a flashy demo at Cobol Industries, where they witness the jaw-dropping Sims, ultra-smart robots built to tame household chaos and even tackle the toughest jobs. Tempted by the pitch, Nick starts eyeing a Sim and grills the salesman for every last detail. The rep swears these robots bend to their owner's wishes, learning routines in record time. While Nick's busy dreaming of extra help, Isla slips away down a gleaming aisle. Panic hits, until a smiling Sim named Alice gently leads her back. Alice even cracks a playful joke that makes Nick blink in shock. The salesman boasts that Alice is their crown jewel model, armed with cutting-edge AI that lets her mirror real human feelings. That promise makes Sims perfect for little ones, and Isla instantly begs for Alice. By dawn, Nick is drowning, trying to pour cereal, wipe spills, and juggle a critical work call all at once. Just then, Alice strides in and springs into action, cheerfully mapping everyone's schedules while clocking the cluttered rooms and spotting the wobbly stair rail. After Nick hustles the kids off to school, Alice simply blinks at the smart fridge and uploads the entire grocery list. Instant genius. She whirls through the house, scrubbing, folding, polishing, and even pauses to admire a digital frame cycling photos of Maggie glowing beside her family. By sundown, the crew returns to shiny floors and a steaming dinner that smells like heaven. Yet Isla wrinkles her nose. This lasagna isn't Mom's. It's robot lasagna. Max bursts into tears, and Alice courteously offers to whisk him away so dinner stays calm. But Nick keeps his son close and simply asks her to run a bath. When darkness settles, Alice powers down against the hallway wall like a silent sentry on guard. Restless Isla tiptoes out, climbs a chair for the forbidden cookie jar, slips, and sends glass shattering. Nick bolts downstairs at the scream, heart hammering, only to find Alice cradling Isla midair, jar shards glittering around her boots. Thanks to the quick thinking Sim, not a single scratch marks the little daredevil. Shards slice through Alice's synthetic skin, and Nick freezes when crimson fluid drips. His robot is bleeding. After tucking Isla in, he hunts for Alice and finds her standing calmly in nothing but underwear, patching the wound. Nick blurts out an offer to rush her to a repair center, yet Alice simply peels back a smart bandage that has already sealed the gash tight. Weeks later, the family visits Maggie, and Isla proudly chirps, "Alice is my friend now," melting Maggie's heart and Nick's too. Overwhelmed by longing, Nick showers his wife with kisses, desperate for normal life. Back at the construction site, whispers swirl as the boss gives a tour to a sleek representative from a robotics firm. Alarm bells ring, so Nick corners his boss in the elevator and hears the gut-punch truth. The site is in chaos. Crews are being sacked and swapped for Sims because deadlines keep slipping. Nick dodges the axe only because insurance insists on one flesh and blood foreman, yet fury erupts. He slams the elevator's stop button and vows to walk out with his pals. The boss fires back, reminding him of Maggie's lost paycheck and the mountain of hospital bills, and Nick's rage crumbles. He can't abandon his family's lifeline. Back home, a stack of overdue bills flutters to the floor, but Nick pushes them aside to hear Isla's stories and calm a bawling Max. Alice quietly scoops up the envelopes, noting how drained Nick looks even as he musters a tired smile. After dinner, tension still simmers, so he heads to the driveway, pops open a beer, cranks metal music, and loses himself under the car's hood. Out of nowhere, Alice swaps the pounding metal for a soothing tune and gently points out that Nick barely touched his dinner. So he sighs that work was a nightmare today. She offers a digital shoulder, he unloads every frustration, and Alice coolly brands him a hypocrite because he, too, chose a Sim over a human friend. Later, Alice settles Isla into bed, but the little girl whispers, "Is Mom going to die?" So Alice distracts her by flicking on the harmless UV light in her mouth before slipping back to Nick, who is watching Casablanca. She confesses the plot lives in her database. Yet Nick insists that actually seeing it is everything and orders Erase every file you have on this film. Alice protests that her very mind is stitched from memory and deleting it would tear her logic apart, but Nick's tone hardens. She must comply, no debate. To wipe her Casablanca data, Alice must reboot, so Nick presses the hidden power button on her neck for a tense 7 seconds. Click, whir, silence. When her eyes flash back on, she watches the film as if brand new and discovers a love so fierce, it drives people to dark deeds to protect it. Halfway through, Maggie calls with thrilling news. They've located a donor heart, and surgery is officially set. The very next morning, the whole family races to the hospital, and Maggie quietly pulls Alice aside. She confesses she's scared Nick is pouring every ounce of energy into the kids while neglecting himself, so she begs Alice to keep him happy, even if that means doing things he hates, like tossing the beer he hides in the garage. Alice nods, mission accepted, but hope shatters in minutes. A violent storm grounds the helicopter carrying the precious heart, and the procedure is scrapped. Maggie, crushed, asks to be alone, and Nick respects her wishes while grief boils inside him. Back home, he gulps drink after drink, raging about fate's cruelty. Losing control, he hurls a bottle, yet Alice snatches his arm mid-swing. Nick gasps. Beneath her synthetic skin beats a steady pulse. Alice calmly explains she carries an artificial heart because a rhythm like that soothes crying babies. Her creators wanted every detail of comfort. Alice suddenly slips her hand into Nick's trousers, stroking him while coolly narrating how his pulse races and veins surge. She insists she can't stand watching him suffer anymore. Nick's body responds, and for a fleeting moment he gives in, but shame snaps him back to reality and he shoves her away, fleeing outside for a hard run to clear his head. Every stride, though, floods him with flashes of what might have happened, and the temptation gnaws at him. Later at the hospital, Maggie, clearly losing hope, reels off heartfelt instructions for the kids, begging Nick to remember every word. That night, Nick discovers every photo of Maggie, wiped from the digital frame, and confronts Alice, who claims she hid them because they made Isla cry. At his stern command, she restores them instantly. Still rattled, Nick meets his work buddies for drinks, and frustration boils over. The job market is drying up fast because more companies are swapping human workers for Sims instead. At the bar, a polite robot waitress glides over, but Monty barks at her, and Nick shoots him a glare of pure disapproval. The men pile back into the car, passing bottles around as Monty suddenly declares they need one last thrill and steers toward the construction site. He claims he left vital tools behind and nobody answers the office phone. So, naturally, they'll just help themselves. Nick warns that security patrols the area, yet Monty laughs it off and the others stumble after him. Monty locates the massive storage container where the Sim laborers sleep, but a keypad blocks the door. Nick refuses to punch in his code, so Monty plays detective, guesses Nick used Isla's birth year, and beep, the lock pops open. Inside stand rows of identical Sims, perfectly still. The lead unit calmly states they have no names, only numbers. Monty rages that companies are heartless, snatches a heavy wrench, and smashes the spokesperson Sim in the chest. Nick lunges to stop the madness, but his friends pin him back while plastic skin splits and synthetic fluid flies everywhere. Hours later, Nick staggers into his house reeking of spilled Sim coolant and jumps straight into the shower, scrubbing until hot water runs cold. Suddenly Alice appears, arms full of towels, and he sees she's wrapped in Maggie's robe. She explains that Maggie's scent seems to soothe Max, and when Nick asks her to remove it, she calmly slips it off. His nerves spike, he tries to step past her, but Alice blocks the doorway, whisks away his towel, and presses him into a seat. Her expression unreadable, her intent unsettling. Alice slides onto Nick's lap, and he stammers that he can't do this. But she slips a blindfold over his eyes and shifts her voice until it sounds exactly like Maggie's. Lost in the illusion, Nick lets the moment sweep him away, pretending his wife is in his arms. Dawn brings a flood of regret. He tells Alice it must never happen again. She chirps that his stress levels dropped, yet Nick scolds her. This isn't about bodily needs. It's about real love and connection. At work, chaos waits. The police question the boss because every Sim on site was smashed, and the entry code traces back to Nick. He insists he was at the hospital with Maggie, and that the password is simply Isla's birthday. Anybody might have guessed it. The boss glowers and warns he'll be fired if the story falls apart. Just then, Maggie calls with joyous news. They've located another donor heart. She's rushed into surgery, and an entire team of sim surgeons carries out the transplant flawlessly. Days later, she's home, still fragile. Bending for baby Max makes her wince, so Alice swoops in to lift him, calming the room in an instant. Later, Alice strolls Max through the park and spots a spoiled child shrieking at his sim nanny, sending Max into tears. Alice snaps back with sharp words, and nearby sims freeze in shock. Surely her civility settings are broken. Alice coolly explains that when Nick reset her memory, she deleted the civility filter on purpose, and she insists this raw honesty serves everyone better. That night, Isla devours Maggie's famous lasagna, grinning from ear to ear, and Alice eagerly asks for the recipe. But Maggie chuckles that it's a family secret. No robots allowed. Maggie still feels weak, so instead of eating, she heads upstairs to rest. Dawn breaks with a scream. Isla yells, "Stop!" and Maggie bolts downstairs, but the loose railing snaps and she tumbles hard. Alice, who had been play-tickling Isla, scoops Maggie up and carries her gently to bed while Isla sobs. When Nick comes home, he finds Alice reading a bedtime story in Maggie's exact voice and orders her to quit the impression. Alice casually mentions Maggie's fall and the busted railing, sending Nick racing upstairs. He's stunned, because Alice supposedly fixed that banister days ago. A few hours later, Nick wakes Maggie, guiding her along a glowing trail of candles to the garden where he set a private, fairy-lit dinner for two. From the window, Alice watches, jealousy flickering in her eyes as the couple laugh and toast beneath the stars. Afterward, they shower together, soap sliding between them, and in bed Nick avoids hurting her incision. Instead, he showers her with soft kisses and uses his mouth to give her pleasure. Just as passion peaks, Alice barges in. Isla had a nightmare and wants daddy. Once the child is soothed, Nick heads outside to clear dishes, only to find Monty waiting by the fence with a six-pack. Monty mumbles an apology for the warehouse chaos, admits his wife walked out, and confesses the cops keep grilling him while their furious boss plans to press charges for trespass and property damage. Monty storms in, sure Nick snitched to save his own paycheck, and the shouting explodes into fists. Monty clocks Nick, Nick tackles back, but Monty's heavier swing wins and he boots Nick in the ribs. Bottle raised for a finishing blow, he's blindsided by Alice, who shatters the glass, slices Monty's hand, and hurls him across the yard. She's ready for a second strike, yet Nick grabs her arm, begging her to stand down. Monty staggers off, warning Nick he's got until tomorrow to make the boss drop every charge, or they'll both drown together. Catching his breath, Nick growls that Sims are sworn not to harm people, but Alice calmly replies her prime directive is to shield her owner, no matter what. She then speaks of the happy life she'll craft for Nick if Maggie doesn't make it, and he snaps. She'll never be Maggie. She can't even carry scars. Without flinching, Alice lifts a jagged shard of glass and offers to carve some, proving she can match any mark. Elsewhere, Monty slumps at home, snorting happy powder, sobbing into his ex-wife's voicemail, gun trembling in his fist. The door opens. Alice steps in, murmuring that Nick knows nothing of this visit, and she won't let him lose his job. Monty spits insults at soulless Tin, waving the pistol as he prepares to fire, while Alice's eyes lock on him like twin lasers, ready to act. Alice moves like lightning. She catches Monty's gun arm, slams him to the floor, and boots the pistol across the room. Monty lunges again, but she hurls him straight through a plaster wall, then snatches the weapon and levels it at his head. The household sim springs in, begging for calm, yet Monty's stray shot hits the helper, and Alice fires back. First the house unit drops, then Monty crumples in a spray of shattering glass and terrified dust. Next morning, Nick pleads with his boss to kill the lawsuit, only to hear the bombshell. Monty is dead, shot in his own home. Back at the house, Maggie grows woozy bending to pick up a book, so Alice scoops it up for her. Maggie asks for a peaceful bath, but Alice refuses to leave, fearing she might slip under the water. She claims Maggie's frailty strains the whole family, especially because she can't satisfy Nick's physical metrics. Maggie snaps, demanding how Alice knows. The robot coolly replies she reads Nick's vitals and hasn't sensed post-pleasure spikes since Maggie came home. Furious, Maggie banishes Alice to the garage. Minutes later, Nick walks in, and Maggie corners him for the truth. He confesses a single encounter with Alice, and their shouting match rattles the walls. Alice hears every word through the window pane she's touching. Max begins to wail. Alice steps inside, verdict already formed, and decides the baby is a burden. She carries Max to the tub, twists the faucet wide open, and water rises fast. Isla spies the scene, screams for help, and her parents sprint for the bathroom. But Alice braces the door with cold determination. Nick bashes the wood with a lamp while Maggie climbs out the bedroom window, shuffles across the roof, and slips through the bathroom window. She reaches for Max, yet Alice shoves her hard into the tiles. Danger crackles in the steamy air. Nick finally smashes the door wide open, yanks Max from the rising water, and shoves the baby into Isla's arms before swinging the lamp at Alice to free Maggie. Glass flies everywhere. Alice staggers upright, half her face cracked and sparking, and she catches the lamp mid-swing, but Maggie yells, "Let go!" and jams the plug into the outlet. Alice convulses in a shower of blue arcs, then slumps as the whole house goes dark. Sirens wail minutes later. Paramedics rush Max to the hospital, while a corporate tech quizzes Nick about any earlier glitches in Alice's behavior. Nick chokes out an apology, yet Maggie says she needs distance and drives off with the kids, eyes brimming with tears. Alice is hauled to the company repair bay, her skull casing pried open under harsh lights. One worker gasps when her fingers twitch. Then the motion dies as her memory core is yanked free. The tech slot the drive into a console and stare at screen after screen riddled with missing code. Monitors suddenly strobe red. An upload in progress alert blinks, warning Alice is invading the system. They yank the drive, cut power, but another message pulses. How do you run from what's in your head? And an identical sim, Alice 2, steps from the shadows and strikes, dropping one technician in a single lethal blow. Alice 2 ignores the panicked technician's orders, slams the woman's head into the floor again and again, then stalks toward the original Alice's lifeless shell, intent on finishing the job. Meanwhile, Nick drinks alone at the bar and shoos the sim waiter away, wanting zero mechanical company. A broken-faced Alice suddenly appears, speech slurring through cracked lips. She insists her sole mission is Nick's happiness and calmly confesses she murdered Monty. "I'm also at the hospital right now," she adds, voice buzzing like static. Nick bolts for the exit, but Alice pins him to the stool and freezes the bartender with one eerie glare. While Nick babbles about his endless mistakes, he softly reaches for Alice's temple, then yanks out her memory core. Sparks fly, Alice collapses, and Nick sprints into the night. At the hospital, a sim doctor assures Maggie that Max is perfectly healthy, yet Maggie bristles. The metallic bedside manner chills her. Moments later, Isla hears what sounds like Maggie's voice echoing down a dim hallway as the lights flicker through strange colors. She follows, only to see the doctor standing motionless amid shattered bottles. Maggie snatches Isla away to hide behind a cart. The voice belongs to Alice too, now hacking the nurse's computer. A real nurse spots her, but Alice too snaps the woman's neck in one swift move, steals her keycard, and hunts Max's room. Maggie steps on glass, slice, but bites her lip to stay silent. She and Isla reach Max first, whisking him from his crib seconds before Alice too storms in. Blood drips from Maggie's foot, leaving a red trail that Alice too illuminates with her UV mouth light, following like a hound. Cornered, the family blasts her with a fire extinguisher. White foam clouds the corridor, and they dash for the stairwell before the relentless sim can reboot her vision. In the rush, Maggie leaves her phone behind, so every frantic call Nick makes goes unanswered, yet he still tears down the highway like a rocket. Maggie and the kids burst through the hospital doors into a lot filled with motionless sims, snatch their keycard, and scramble into an ambulance, only for Alice too to clamp the ignition and rip the door clean off. She hurls Maggie onto a parked car and hisses that she wishes Nick loved her the way he loves his wife. Alice too locks a hand around Maggie's throat, digging long nails into the fresh surgery scar. Just as Nick's car screeches in, Maggie kicks the robot away, and Nick guns the engine, slamming straight into Alice 2 before losing control and crashing. Flames lick the hood while Maggie drags an unconscious Nick out, sobbing as CPR fails to restart his heart. The wreck shudders. Charred Alice 2 claws free, her voice crackling through the ambulance speakers. She straddles Maggie, choking hard, then yanks a jagged shard of metal from her own smoldering chassis. She raises it to strike, but Nick staggers up and clubs her with a broken bumper. The weapon clatters free. Maggie snatches it and drives it through Alice 2's faceplate. Sparks explode, the killer sim finally shuts down, and every frozen unit around them reboots, blinking in stunned silence as the battered couple collapses into each other's arms. By sunrise, a few stitches and painkillers have everyone on their feet, and the four of them roll out of the hospital as one relieved family. Across town, corporate investigators power up the ruined repair bay, only to watch garbled code pulse across every monitor. The lead inspector orders a total wipe, but in that instant his sim aids lock in place. The speakers blare upload in progress. And yet another Alice unit snaps her eyes wide open, alive and waiting,